Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. I'm joined today by Cody from Marauder Custom Works. Pretty cool dude, does a lot of cerakote stuff. We're going to talk about a variety of things. So, with that being said, Cody, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Why should we care?
Yeah, so my name's Cody. I started a business called Marauder Custom Works. I do a lot of shooting, competition shooting, and just all around tomfoolery with firearms. I'm a big fan of the Second Amendment and the freedoms associated with it.
Nice. So yeah, so for again, those who aren't too familiar, the cerakote process, you want to kind of just give me us like the cerakote for dummies, like how it works and why you should do it.
Yeah, so Cerakote is a really cool coating. It's a ceramic based uh, firearms coating. It can obviously be applied to a lot more than just firearms, but there's a prep process to it, and it's not only can you make the firearm look a lot cooler, but it is also um, a lot more protective than most of your other coatings, such as like anodizing and bluing.
Sweet. So yeah, definitely it sounds like it's definitely an improvement over the rattle can job. As cool as it may look, it definitely sounds like it's got a little bit more longevity to it than just a can of Krylon.
Yeah, and the rattle can, I mean, it's cool. It's a vibe. It's definitely a good look, but if you're just looking for that extra bit of protection.
Sweet. So so I guess like my what is what would you say your like what's your background? I've talked to you a little bit on here. Um, but like what is it what's your background? What got you started into this?
So I just like one day Sig Sauer released the P320 X5 and I saw it and I was like, oh God, I want one of those. So I bought it. It was like the original first gen X5.
Nice.
And then I got this pistol and I was like, well, damn, what am I going to do with it now? And so like I started looking around. I found USPSA, the shooting competitions. And so I started shooting USPSA. And so I've been shooting USPSA now for like 7 years and it's just quickly evolved from like, oh, let's go, play a shooting sport to like, hey, we've got buddies that we're training with and like we're working and learning new skills and trying to move
Yeah,
up.
I think that's one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is USPSA and other versions of it to where any type of like, competitive type of deal. The thing I like about it is you can either one, you can game it and get like all the gear that you need that's centered towards that, or you can just run your standard kit regardless of how, whichever way you want to do it. And there are even, things like the tactical games, things like that that are centered more around that. But the thing I like
Yep.
about it is that it's a really good way to induce stress in a fun environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're still not getting shot at, which is awesome.
Right. Right.
Um,
But
but
you got that stress of a time and a score, trying to be
yeah, man, that
competitive.
that timer goes off and your mind goes blank, and it's just really fun to see how you react to that. And,
The place I used to work in Spokane, there was this indoor range, and on Thursdays we would set it up and do what we call a fun shoot. And it's basically like one stage of a shooting competition, right? And
okay.
as employees, we'd get to go do it for free. And it never fails to where like you walk the course and you're like, all right, I'm gonna shoot these targets. I'm gonna reload on the move here. I'm gonna shoot those targets. I'm gonna game it. It's this many rounds. I got this much in my mag. I'm gonna reload on the fly, and then the buzzer goes off. All of that goes out the window. you know,
Yeah,
all of
all of
your
it. Yeah.
careful planning immediately dies, and you're like, "Crap! Why am I empty? I was never supposed to be empty. I was supposed to reload 3 targets ago."
Yes. Yes. I do that a lot. And so the
Yeah,
funny thing is, like you said you can always game it. You can get all the equipment to game it. So I used to game it. So after I got hooked into the sport with that Sig, I went off and bought a Staccato or an STI before they were Staccato. And I
nice.
had I had the race holster and the race mag pouches and the race belt and like I was just out having fun with it. And then like that gun kind of it was a nice pistol. Like don't get me wrong, for anyone that owns a Staccato like or an STI, I like them, but my STI required maintenance after every time I shot it.
Oh yeah, yeah. They are. they are really nice guns, but they are picky. Like they take a little bit of time to get worked in.
Yes, and
I I'll
go
say
ahead.
like the when we first got in the Staccato XCs at the place I used to work, I remember sitting there and I was like, who in their right mind would pay used car money for a pistol, right? And then I
Yeah,
shot one and I was like, oh dear God, take my kidney.
right.
just
Yeah,
shut up and take my money.
yeah.
Just
Do
take it
whatever it
all.
takes. Yeah,
Yeah. So my whole thing is we used to rent out guns to people at the place I used to work at, and be like, hey, they'd be like, hey, what's the coolest gun I can shoot? They're trying to be like impress their buddies, or whatever, right? And you're
yeah,
like, here, try this, man. Hand them over Staccato XC. They go shoot it. They're like, oh, dude, that thing's sick. I want to buy one. You're like, yeah, that'll be $4,000. Ah, never mind.
Yes, exactly. They are sweet, but man, the STIs before they were Staccato were they were maintenance hogs, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's why, like, I was really surprised with the shift to Staccato that they were able to get a lot more reliable,
Yes.
especially like with more police departments picking them up. I know there's a couple of police departments and SWAT teams that were using them because I knew like them from STI, and I was like, man, I don't know if I'd really want to trust my life to that.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up selling my STI and bought a Sig P320 Spectre comp.
Oh, nice.
And I got a Core Essentials battle belt and all of that good stuff, and a Safariland level 2 holster. And so that's what I shoot USPSA with now, is like a whole duty setup.
Oh, nice.
And
Very nice.
I decided that instead of having a gamer gun, I wanted to have something that I knew I could trust my life to if shit went down. And I know people are going to argue about if you can trust your life to SIG or not, but that's what I got.
Hey, yeah, that's the whole thing. It's really funny to see that they were always really well known for their 226s and stuff, but their polymer stuff was never really like super high regarded
Yeah.
until the military picked up the M18. Then everyone was like, "Oh, the military picked it up, and it must be perfect," as if no one remembered the Beretta.
Right.
And then like everyone just like foamed at the mouth over it, and they could do no wrong. And then they pumped that out, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And then we have all these issues, and then on top of that, they're like, "Oh hey, Sig Spear," and they're like, "Oh, this is the best weapon ever made." And then Sig's like, "Ha, just kidding, it doesn't work."
Barrel.
Yeah. Well, like I love the fact that they're like, "Hey, we're gonna make this new ammunition to go with it." And they're like, okay, sick. So you're going to have like millions of rounds available like day one for us to be able to trial this, right? And they're like, yeah, no. So we made it in 308 anyway. Go fuck yourself.
Yes.
Like, just like in all honesty, like it's a really good business strategy is to basically like win the contract and then screw them over and make them buy all the stuff you already have before you make new things.
Right.
Because they're already locked in. You're like, oh, you already picked us. Like, screw you, bud.
Yeah.
But it's really funny, I think, to see like the cult followings that certain people have just because certain military units do things and they don't quite understand how like contracts with the government work.
Yeah. Yeah.
People go
anything.
ahead. Yeah, I mean, like people don't understand that it's not like, oh, this is the best performing, highest capable killing machine known to man. It's yeah, we wined and dined the right people and came in at the cheapest price.
Yes, exactly.
Like any coincidence that the guy who was in charge of that procurement program now works for SIG? Weird.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's nothing to look at here. Aliens.
Yeah, we're not just going to throw a bunch of zeros on a paycheck and then, when you know that you retire in 6 months and then just invite you over for that.
Yeah, no.
So, yeah, I always get a kick out of that when people are like, oh, well, this military used it, so it must be good, you know?
Right. I will say, though, I have not had any issues with my SIGs. Luckily, thank God.
Hey, well, that, I will say it seems like it is kind of hit or miss. As much as I trash talk SIG, they do seem to work. Like when they work well.
Yeah.
And it seems like I haven't seen really any issues with the 365s. And my wife, that's what she carries all the time is a 365 XL.
Okay.
And you know what they do again with the 320s, you know, you see the stuff now where it's like, oh, it just went off in the cop's holster. And I wonder sometimes too, like if those are newer 320s or if they just didn't follow through with the recall the first time, you know?
Yeah. I feel a lot of it's like operator error.
I'm sure there's a bit of that for sure. Most gun related issues are.
Yeah, and then just people don't want to admit to it because I mean, there's a huge stigma about, you know, oh my God, this guy just had an indie into his leg, like.
I just effing shot myself.
Exactly. But there's a huge stigma behind that, like as there should be, because that's just stupid. But.
Oh yeah, well I mean that's like every time you see like the Instagram or Facebook posts of some FUD who shot himself on accident, and he's like, you know, people keep giving me a hard time, but that just means they're not around guns enough. If you're around guns enough, like it's going to happen. You're like, no, it's
False.
not. Yeah, I was like, I guarantee you, Jerry Michalek has never once shot himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
or
no, I'm pretty
like,
yeah, I'm pretty sure you're just retarded. That's like we had a guy one time come into the gun store and he had one of these. I can't remember the number system for it, but it's one of the Remington 783s or something like that, where it's like the semi-auto rifles that look like an 870.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he had one, and it was a 30-06. And he brings it into the gun shop I work at, and he's bringing it in for repairs. And he's like, yeah, I think I messed something up. We're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, there's a round stuck in the chamber. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll take a look at it, man. We'll figure it out. And we're like, what happened? And this dude like just nonchalantly admits how much of a retard he is. So he tells us he was trying to buy some surplus 30-06 on some website, right?
Okay.
And either he messed up or they shipped him the wrong stuff. But long story short, he got 1,000 rounds. He's supposed to order 1,000 rounds of 06. He ordered 1,000 rounds of 7.62 by 53 Argentine Mauser ammunition, right?
Nice.
And instead of being like, hey, maybe this is the wrong stuff, he just figured if it fits, it ships.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's like, yeah, I got 3 rounds off before I had a problem.
Yeah. I mean, if it seats, it yeets, man.
I'm just like, this is why I hate people.
Yeah.
Like, as gun owners, we are both the coolest but yet retarded people on the planet. Like, we are artistic in 2 different ways.
Yeah.
We are autistic in the sense of like, I know meticulous details about everything of this firearm, and also autistic in the sense of like, big gun go boom. I'm just going to put rounds in it. Just if God didn't want me to put them in here, he wouldn't have made them fit.
Exactly. If it wasn't supposed to be, God would have made it to where you can't.
Yeah.
That's how I live my life.
Well, that's like, did you see that Grantham video where he did that?
Yeah. All the different calibers and the different guns.
I was really shocked when it came to the, what was it, the 4570 out of a 410 or something like that?
Yeah.
I think he did. Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of impressed. Because I was sitting there, I was like, I have a little 410 break action shotgun, and I'm about to go buy some 4570.
Right. I wonder how long it would actually live for, though. Like,
yeah, that's the thing, is I wouldn't want to do that for very long.
Yeah. So I get scared because I've got a little 300 blackout for like in the house and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I've also got a 223, obviously, and it scares the shit out of me that one day someone's gonna pick up a 300 blackout mag and like shove it in my 223.
Oh, dude, I am so like, I don't know what the word is. I guess like I have like this irrational fear of things like that happening, just somehow. And so I went through and I have some 20-round GI mags, and all of my 20 rounders are 300 blackouts. All of my 30 rounders are 5.56, so I don't mess them up. And like, I'm so paranoid about it. Anytime I go to the range, I'm just sitting there like looking at my magazines, just staring down at the ammo, just like, okay, we're good.
Yes, it is.
I'm just waiting for that one time, you know, I'm hoping that like if it happens, I put a 5.56 in a 300 blackout, not the other way around, because I feel like one is way less catastrophic than the other.
Yes, yes.
One's a happy accident. The other one's a bad day.
I've just gotten to the point to where like they don't both go to the range at the same time.
Yeah. So my 300 blackout. Funny story about this. So are you familiar with Q's Honey Badger?
Yes.
Okay, so they made the Honey Badger, then they made the slightly cheaper version of the Sugar Weasel, right?
Yep.
And right around the time that happened, I was like, I should probably put together a 300 blackout, just kind of see what the hype's about. Everybody's got one. I'll be a trend follower. Screw it, right? So I got a kit from Palmetto and an arrow lower, threw it together, and I call it my crack possum. Just to follow the trend. Yeah, and you can tell and it's one of those things where it was like, I had a few drinks before I started putting it together, and everything functions properly. The only thing is, so on the trigger guard, on the forward hole where the roll pin would normally go, not a roll pin, it's a screw. Okay. Like it looks like a roll pin, but it screws in. So me, after several drinks, was like bigger hammer, roll pin, not go in hole. Got about halfway into the hole and realized that's a screw.
Perfect.
And just figured, you know what? If you're wrong, stay wrong.
Exactly. Just
this thing's never coming out.
Yeah, no. Fake it till you make it has a genuine spot in my vocabulary.
And I'm gonna post pictures of this thing soon. Once I make sure it's not gonna get my dog killed. And there's I tried to rattle can it. I've rattle canned other of my guns, and I was going for like a Miami Vice striped type of vibe, right? Because I've got one of these like fluorescent orange. What do you call these? These fluorescent orange Lancer mags. And I was like, oh man, and I've got this, and my buddy had given me this super hot purple, metallic purple charging handle. So this gun's been kind of a meme for me for a while. So I was like, oh, I'll do this Miami Vice stripe pattern. And by the time I got done with it, it looks like the reason the Geneva Convention was written. This thing is an affront to God. It is. I mean, it looks like I just choked out a unicorn and made it like its last death throes on top of this rifle. It's atrocious. And awesome. I kind of dig it all that much more now because of it, because it's just as trashy as I am.
That's dope.
Like it's one of those things that like if I had it cerakoted this way, I'd be very upset that was what I got back.
That's fair. That's been like some of my biggest fears of doing Cerakote is like someone gives me their idea and then I finish it and they're like, yeah, this isn't what I wanted. And it's like, wait, what? This is what you asked for.
Have you ever run into something like that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Luckily, it's always in the back of my mind that like, especially because like I've talked to a whole lot of people about Cerakote and they think it's hydro dipping.
Oh yeah. That I would see that being an issue. Yeah,
it is not. It's like these people are like, well, how much would you charge me to do this? And they pull up like a gun that looks like it's wrapped in mossy oak.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, I can't do that. Like, what do you mean you can't do that? That's Cerakote. No, it is not.
Right.
So that's a big sort of concern of mine that I'm going to get someone like that and just not know how to handle the situation.
I have a super intricate micro pattern that I need you to do that would take hundreds of hours of man labor, and I want it done for $60.
Yeah, exactly. So like, because like I did those chalky chip mags, and I didn't understand how intense the process for stenciling those was going to be.
Dude,
God.
I attempted just like a traditional tiger stripe, like nom tiger stripe with just paint, and that was a pain. That took way more time than I thought it would. And I can't imagine trying to, like, I've seen some of your stuff and like some of the smaller details like that. Especially doing multiple magazines like that, I just can't imagine the time that would take.
Yeah, it got a little rough sometimes, but we powered
But no, I
through.
mean, yeah, I think it's really cool. I think that's a really cool idea. I mean, I think Cerakote's really cool, especially some of the patterns and stuff I've seen people be able to do with that. But yeah, so I think one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit too with that was since speaking of magazines, I put up a post recently, kind of want to get your take on it. So I'm kind of a big believer that I think for a couple of reasons that when it comes to like numbers of magazines, like you see a lot of times, especially in like whether it be like with the Minuteman type stuff or prepper stuff or tactical stuff, whatever you want to call that realm that we kind of exist in.
Uh-huh.
People like, oh, how much ammo should you have? How many magazines should you have? And I'm a big believer that I think whatever your main fighting rifle and pistol options are going to be, like the things you're going to be shooting the most often, especially if you have multiple rifles of that or multiple sets of kit, I think you should have 100 magazines. And I don't say that hyperbolically. Like I think legitimately 100 magazines, and that gives you magazines to have multiple loadouts loaded up and ready to go. If you have like a chest rig and then a plate carrier and a belt, you could have them all ready, all
Mhm.
loaded. You've got magazines that are loaded. You've got magazines to train with that you can dedicate just to training and beat the crap out of them. You've got magazines, like I said, ready to go. You've got other magazines you can just leave in the wrapper, throw them in a safe, wait for a rainy day, wait for something to break. Maybe your buddy's low on cash and just bought a new rifle, and you're like, hey, bud, here's some mags. Happy birthday. You have a lot of options. You don't have to worry about mag bands. And if you do have mag bands and you got a ton of magazines, you want to make some extra side cash, you just, hey, magazines. So look at me. Look what I got.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts are you should have enough magazines to load up each piece of magazine bearing equipment 3 times. So
Yes, I think that's a good standard.
if you've got a 6 mag placard on your plate carrier, and then you've got like a recce rig that can hold 8, and then you've got a belt with spots for 3 mags, you should be able to fill all those up 3 times over.
Yeah, there's one thing I've talked about before on some of the episodes, and I'm going to harp on it again, as I think that depending upon what your goal is, I don't think we talk about carrying enough ammunition.
No.
A lot of times. And I think part of it is it's this very big, like the GWAT has kind of like infuriated, or not infuriated, it's kind of like dug into our minds of the way that warfare is conducted, because it's all we've known for 20 years. Most of us that are listening to this are in the age group that we were in school when it started. And, some of us joined up to go take part in it. Some of us, are, on pushing 30 or older, and 30 or 40, and we grew up with that. That's all we knew really for how warfare was conducted. And so this idea of like 7 to 8 mags on a combat load, topping out maybe at like 300 rounds with 10 mags, and you're ready to rock and roll. But we forget a lot of times that we're not doing spec ops in the dark hit and run type stuff, and we're not doing these things where we have an infinite supply chain behind us.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest thing is like a lot of people get in this mindset like, oh, I got my 10 mags, I'm good. And I'm like, sweet. Like what happens when those 300 rounds go really fast because you don't practice like actually trying to like actually sustained rates of fire through a firefight, because 300 rounds does not last as long as you think it does if you're like, oh crap, stuff's going down, and you're just returning fire like crazy, or you're bounding, or buddy tactic or Overwatch or whatever people call it, like leapfrogging, right?
Yep.
I've done drills with people before, especially like the biggest thing that gets me is like the micro chest rig guys. They're like, oh, I just got the 3 mags, I'm good. I get for like a quick thing or like something you have in your car or something like that. But too many people, I think, are just like, I've got my 3, I'm set. And you do one thing where you're like, all right, we got 100-yard range. You and your buddy leapfrog down the range and just keep up a constant rate of fire. See how many mags you go through. See how much rounds you have left at the end of that. Like you go through pretty quick. And that's not even getting shot at. That's not, there's no adrenaline. There's nothing going on. That's just you doing some work with the boys and you go through a bunch of ammo really quick, which I think like again, I think that's a really good standard to have, is to be able to fill your stuff up at least 3 times. So like having your loadout, but also like having a way to carry that ammunition, either it be in your pack or something like that, to reload that loadout when the
Yeah.
time arrives.
Yeah, which I think that's where people are going to struggle with, because I mean, logistics is hard to plan by yourself,
Absolutely.
or even with a group of 4 or 5 people, you know. And it all just kind of comes down to like what catastrophic event pushes us to have to actually start utilizing these things. Because
Yeah.
if we get invaded, you know, some Red Dawn scenario or something, like, you're not going to be able to just like, oh yeah, I'm going to run home and grab these other mags. Like, you know, your neighborhood could be inaccessible, or, you know, whatever. I don't know.
Exactly.
So
I mean, like that's a great point. Is like you don't know what the scenario could be, to where like you have, you know, enough ammunition to last till now, from now till Jesus comes back, and but you're not home when it happens.
Yeah.
You know, well, great. Now what? You know, so which is why like certain sets of skills and like mindset are way more important, um, necessarily than just stuff, but also having like the idea of how the logistics work. You know, and that's something I've touched on a little bit before too, and I think a lot of people don't touch on enough, is the importance of logistics, because like tactics wins battles, but logistics wins wars.
Yep.
You know, I mean, a quick example of that, you can look at the Civil War, and there's a myriad of things you can glean from that. But the North overall just had much better logistics. They could get stuff out, they could get weapons, equipment, and ammunition to their people faster and more efficiently. You know, Lee was a smart general. He won a lot of battles. He did a lot of crazy stuff that was unconventional for the time, won a lot of fighting, lost the war. The North could put more people, more ammo, and more stuff in a location faster than he could, and then that's basically how, you know, what happened. And
Yeah.
if you look at that, like I think like the ability, again, understanding that like, hey, you might need to get used to learning how to carry heavy loads of equipment on your back, because you might, like, whatever you have is what you have. Like there's no one, you can't get on the radio and call in an ammo resupply and have a helo drop off, you know, a Pelican case full of goodies, you know.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta trust Billy Bob to be able to drive his F-250, you know, to
Right,
wherever.
exactly.
If you have that, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing too, is, you know, as even with like a small group, let's say, you know, you've got 4 or 5 of you, if you want to have some kind of logistics thing, like there's a lot of things that I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to say it's impossible, but it's things to think about, where you're like, okay, let's say we all have our own stuff, and we all agree to basically do like a tithe of some of our stuff into like a communal pile for the group, right?
Yep.
You know, everyone puts in a box of ammo or whatever, right? Well, where are you going to keep it? You know, do you keep it at a centralized storage unit that everyone has a key to? Maybe. Do you keep it at Bob's house? Do you trust Bob not to dip into the stash? How do you hold each other accountable? What if Bob moves? You know,
yeah. What happens?
There's so. Go ahead.
Yeah, what happens then? Like, you got to think of those kinds of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of logistical questions that come up with, because we're not military, we're not a standardized unit with logistical capabilities and, you know, a central hub and everything like this, and we just send up a request and things come down to us. So I think that's one thing that people need to understand, you know, is it's not if things go down, depending on what the scenario may be, you know, it's not going to be like this, hey, all these groups just immediately form and we've got this standing army with this massive logistical train, you know, and we're able to just rock and roll day one. You know, it's going to be like, oh crap, how do we get stuff? Because we ain't got nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, or yeah, because like it also, like another thing too to think about is like, what happens if you have someone in your group who maybe like they're on the lesser side of being prepared? You know, you've got everyone else pretty squared away, and this person's just starting. Like, if things go down, do you just give up your stuff to them,
Yeah.
or is that their fault for not being prepared?
Yeah, and that's just, I guess that's something like your group would have to come up with. Because like if he was in our group and he just was, a younger guy or like running into monetary issues throughout his life, like, and shit popped off, like I would not be opposed to handing a guy, 10 mags and saying, here you go.
Right. I think that's where a lot of that experience comes in. I have been a part of a group where, we had a guy who was very much like every time he'd show up to the range, he'd conveniently forget to bring his ammo.
Oh God.
And he's like, oh, I forgot my ammo. You want to mind if I borrow a couple mags, or I'll get you next time, and things like that. Like to the point to where you're like, all right, I don't think you're getting invited back, my guy. Like it happens so many times, and it builds kind of this precedent to where you're like, you get to know who he is. But yeah, I think that's one thing too, to where I kind of like the idea as well of like having multiple sets of kit, or like whenever you upgrade stuff, because we all kind of start the same, right? I guess maybe not all the same, but I would say like a majority of people, when they get into their firearms journey, they don't know any better when they start buying kit. And so sometimes they buy bad stuff, or not necessarily bad stuff, but they buy stuff that there's better stuff out there. Like they might buy the airsoft chest rig, or maybe a really cheap piece of surplus kit. There's some surplus kit out there that's really good, but then they upgrade and they get like some better gear as they learn, right?
Yeah.
And you could sell that off, you could give it to a yard sale, whatever, but you could also just maybe like throw it in the back somewhere, and next time you need somebody to where you're like, hey, you've got that younger guy who's got those monetary issues. He doesn't necessarily have a chest rig or something, right? And you're like, hey, it's not great, but it's here you go.
Yeah.
And
like, I've got a Condor plate carrier. I'm not exactly proud to admit that I have a Condor plate carrier, but it's a set of plates in it, and it sits in my closet in case someone needs it. Like
please don't say that they're steel.
No, they are ceramics.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to hand someone something I think is going to kill them.
Depends on how well you like the guy.
Yeah. But
I will say, I remember like, actually that's the other thing too about armors. I remember like, because things change so much too with new stuff coming out. I remember when AR-500, like the big appeal to it at the time was it was like the only way to get armor that was, still had ballistic protection that was affordable. Like ceramic plates were like $1,200 a piece at one point. And I remember like you couldn't get anything for cheap, and it was like that was the only thing, and that was the big appeal. I remember when it first came out, I saw a Demo Ranch video where he was like, I shot this AR-500 plate with 75 slugs and no penetration.
Yeah.
And my first thought was like, bro, if you're RoboCopping me, I'm probably already screwed. Like my insides are mush. If I get hit with 75 slugs, I'm in such a bad position already. I don't think I want to make it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Like ribs, what are those?
Yeah, but at the same time, like I get like steel. I am proud to admit I've never owned a set of steel plates.
I will say my very first set, and again, just getting into it, didn't really know any better. My first set was steel. I had the what do they call it? They're like special coating that keeps the
spall coating.
Yeah, spall coating. Yeah, I had that on it, and I was like, oh, it's multi-curved and spall coating. I'll be okay. And then at one point, I watched a video about a guy testing that on ballistic dummies and showing like how much it penetrated into the neck. I was like, maybe I should just put a bunch of duct tape up there.
Right.
I was like, I gotta find a way to make it work. I'm committed.
Yeah, well, like, because I've what was it? I had a buddy buy a set of steel, and when we were giving him shit for it, he's like, it's not that bad. We're like, what are you talking about? He's like, I sprayed some truck bed liner on it. It's not the same.
If it fits, it ships.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, because it's funny because I remember I had a buddy of mine, like, again, similar type of thing, and he was like, oh, well, I'm not even going to waste money on that. And he's like, he worked at a scrapyard, and so he would just take big chunks of steel and then just like use a acetylene torch and like kind of cut them and then kind of grind them down to size, right?
Yep.
First off, wearing like 20 pounds of plates, okay?
Jesus.
You're like, oh my God, your poor back. And then the first time someone went out there and shot it with like some 20-inch barrel 5.56 and just pierced right through it, he's like, all right, but like, what are the odds? I was like, what?
100% so far.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty high.
No, I have always loved the bickering back and forth, like the just as good crowd, because I am a very firm believer in buy once, cry once.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is like, though, is depending on how you got into guns, I think that that's a very big learning cycle for some people that like they just, and I speak from experience, they just won't learn until they've messed up.
Yeah.
Like they have to figure out like, well, maybe it's all just hype. Like it can't be that bad, and then you realize you're like, oh no, like it is that bad.
Yeah.
I embarrassing story. So again, when I was first turning 21, I went down to go pick up. Actually, let's back up. Let's back up further. I had such a fuddy start to my gun experience, right?
Okay.
Buying my first guns. I grew up, grandfather teaching me how to shoot. I've been shooting my whole life, but I didn't have a good understanding really of a bunch of different things about guns. Like I just knew I liked guns. I wanted guns, right?
Yep.
But I didn't have a bunch of money and I was cheap. So the first rifle I ever bought, I went to a Big 5 and I bought a Mosin.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was like mentally lying to myself that I was going to learn how to run that Mosin to the point to where I could be competitive, like not like in a competition setting, but like I could defend my life with this Mosin in the modern day. As if I'm going to be like some kind of like enemy at the gates, dude, with like this Tasco scope that came with it.
just running the piss out of a Mosin. Just as
I was
as
like,
you can run it.
I remember I used to buy Spam cans back when they were still cheap, and I would shoot that thing so much the wood would heat up to the point that the Cosmoline would just drip, and I was just run that thing. Like my right arm would just be destroyed because I'd just been running that bolt wildly. And then my first pistol I ever bought, like I finally learned from that, and I bought like an actual rifle. I bought an AK as my first like tactical rifle.
Okay.
But my first pistol I ever bought, again, like such a FUD. I went to Sportsman's Warehouse, and this is all when I was in the Navy at the time. And I was stationed at Naval Base Bangor, just like near Bremerton, and in the Washington area, near Seattle. And I walked in there, and I had every intention of either buying a Smith & Wesson M&P or a Glock 19. And what I left with
was
a Ruger 1911.
Oh God.
Because I had listened. It's funny. It's now like having worked in the gun industry and learned so much like over like for like a long time, like getting that start into it and just kind of learning by, having to pick things up as I go.
Yep.
The biggest thing that moved me that I started to realize was the gun guy I would listen to a lot. His channel was Such Double Ot. Now, if anyone's not familiar with him, good dude. He's got good videos, but if you'll notice, he's never had a negative review in his life.
No.
Everything on there is like 100% like, hey, you should maybe give this a good review. Everyone. Oh yeah, everything on his show that he has is recommend this to everybody, right?
Yep.
And I didn't pick up on that at the time, and I was like, "Oh, the internet said this guy said it was great. It must be great." And so I bought that 1911, and I rocked that heavy piece of crap for years. And eventually, I wound up trading that for my Enfield that I picked up. But dude, I was such a FUD when I started this, man. Like my 3-gun loadout was a Mosin, a Romanian parts kit AK, and a 1911 with steel plates.
Nice.
I've come so far. Like it's like I feel like I'm giving a testimony of like I used to be a drug addict and then I found Jesus. You know,
Yeah.
like that's how I feel when I tell people these stories, and it's like learn from my mistakes. Don't do me. Like don't do that.
Yeah. See, and I started off in the gun world with my very first gun that I purchased myself was a Springfield XD.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh no.
Oh Jesus.
that was my in 45 ACP too, mind you.
Oh no.
And so I was rocking my loadout was a Springfield XD 45 ACP and an SKS Chinese.
Yes. 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 Let the FUD flow through you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to talk about being a FUD? I was like poster child.
Dude, did you have like a Tapco stock with the side folder?
No, it was original wood.
Oh, so at least you kept it classy. It was tasteful.
Yeah, well, at the time too, like I didn't know that, like you could modify guns like that, like. Then
yeah,
because this was before like posting pictures of guns on the internet was like the thing to do.
Yeah,
and so like you had to go to the Walmart and scroll the Guns and Ammo magazine to like get your gun news.
I remember like okay, so I have kids now, and I feel like how like there's certain things that like you hear yourself say them and like they actually happened, but they sound so fake because of the way things are now.
Yeah.
Like I remember selling guns on Facebook.
Yeah, right. Like
yeah, and then I remember like and then like Facebook started to crack down on it, so people would have like a picture of like a Glock 19 right next to a Mountain Dew can and be like, Mountain Dew, $700 comes with 3 refills.
Yeah,
like all the cowboy hat comes with this, blah blah blah. And like all the ways to get around it, and it's just like. Looking back on it, it just seems like such a weird thing to say because like it seems so foreign and impossible now.
So the funny thing is like I still sell guns on Facebook. And I'm usually quite successful.
Yeah. I just remember being able to go to like, AK guys forum, whatever, or and you'd be like, oh hey look, I could buy an AK here or whatever, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And well, that's like, so I worked at a gun shop for a while, and I got this Remington rolling block 7mm Mauser from a guy. Grandfather passed away. He didn't want anything it was a half finished gun. It was missing a few pieces, so I picked it up from him, and he gives it to me basically for free. So I go around and I find out there are a bajillion different variants of this gun, none of which like they're old enough that none of them are really specified in any way on the gun as to what they are.
Okay.
There's like very few markings on the gun, and I basically find the only person that actually makes parts for them. There's one guy in Nevada, doesn't do emails, doesn't do anything else. So you basically have to write a money order, choose from the diagram which parts you need, and send it to him and hope that he's still alive to send it back.
Nice.
And so I finally go about this. I send him the money order and I'm like, dude, I feel like I've just committed identity theft or something,
Right.
I get the pieces, I put the gun together. Super cool. So I'm like, okay, cool. I want to go shoot it. Well, I start looking up. I'm like, oh man, I kind of like want to make sure this thing's safe. It's over 100 years old. So I start looking into a few things, and come to find out, 7mm Mauser had not been a standardized cartridge until 10 years after this gun was out of production.
Oh God.
Yeah. So like basically everyone's like, it's kind of a 50-50. It's either in spec or it's not. And I didn't have a gauge. So they were like, yeah, so there's 2 ways to do this, and both of which are sketchy. So the first one was, take a 7mm brass, hand load it, do a light load, throw it in there, shoot it, see if it fits see if it fit, see what happens if it fire forms or if it varies, if it varies in any way from what you did when you put it in there, don't shoot it. Not safe, right? It's out of
Yeah.
spec. That are just solely hand load light loads. The other option, way sketchier, and it was load in a 7mm round, take a piece of paper, wrap it around it, and see how many pieces of paper you can fit. And I'm like, what kind of paper? Is there a specific, like, what if it's like construction paper, normal paper? Like, what are we talking?
Right? Tissue paper?
Yeah, like, this is not a scientific measurement. So we take it out, we put it in a sled, tie a string around the trigger, and basically shoot it like an old school cannon 3 times, made sure it didn't blow up, and then I let my cousin shoot it first.
There you go. There you go. Always let someone else do it first.
Exactly. If it's sketchy stuff, that's why you have friends.
Exactly.
It's like all those dudes that shoot tannerite at like fridges and microwaves at like 10 feet.
Yeah, yeah. Although I am the friend that will do the sketchy shit with guns. I'm not. I don't know. I've never been terribly scared of it.
I've never valued my life that much.
I just, I'm a very firm believer in if your ticket's pulled, your ticket's pulled.
That's a pretty solid argument. Like, once it's your time, it's your time. You're just,
there ain't nothing you're gonna do to change it. So
tannerite be damned.
Exactly.
So I will say, though, I am looking forward to if people figure out this, tannerite Roomba. Have you seen that meme going around?
I have.
I'm actually kind of terrified that guy. I don't know if he poured it in there or if he just poured it on the ground and watched his Roomba to see what would have happened. Because I'm not gonna lie, if he just poured it out on the ground and like waited for the Roomba to pick it up, I'm kind of terrified. That would have been scary to watch.
I don't know. Just, I guess because tannerite has to have the punch to make it go off, that kinetic energy.
I just feel like I don't know if Roomba. I don't have a Roomba, but I don't know if they get hot or something.
Yeah,
but I just feel like there would be one of those things that you're watching it and you're like, this is going to go one of 2 ways.
Yeah.
It's like those memes where it's like when dad watches the kids.
Yep. Yes.
Oh man, speaking of which, I don't know if you have kids. I do.
I have a kid.
I took a have you ever seen those like drop leg panels that are Molly?
Yes.
Yeah, so I took one of those and took the 2 straps for it, and it works perfectly. The top strap as a neck strap and the bottom strap as a waist strap. It worked perfectly for my son when he was little, and now it works great for my daughter because she's still small. And I put like a little admin pouch on there and shoved those little Nerf darts in there.
Nice.
So now when you like place Nerf guns or whatever, they roll around with that. And I'm just like, I am a good dad.
Yeah. So my son just turned 4 a couple months ago, and I got him one of those Savage Rascals for his 4th birthday, and he loves it.
Nice.
So
that's awesome, man.
He also has a Heritage Rough Rider 22 revolver.
Nice. See, I started my kid off with a Red Ryder, and then he shoots my 10-22 every now and then, and dude, he loves it.
Yeah.
So that was like my biggest fear with having kids. I was like, but what if they don't like guns?
Teach them to like guns.
Like, you're gonna like this, or you ain't gonna eat.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not raising a communist.
No, my kid loves it, so, which is dope.
Yeah, I think that's another big thing too for those listening. Like, if you have kids, like, just remember too that like they are the next generation of this, and I think it's important to instill that love of freedom and of firearms and everything that goes with it, like, in them at such a young age, because they're being impressioned by everything else. You might as well throw your hand in the mix.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like that's the one thing. If you don't, and they grow up and they don't care about it, they have no desire for it. Like, well, great. When you die, the freedom's gone.
Right.
So yeah,
you can't let the school system be their only source of influence.
Oh, exactly. You know, and that's like everyone's like, oh, but you're indoctrinating your kids with whatever. It'd be like, and what do you think school is, man?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
somebody's doing it. I might
Yeah.
as well start doing it, you know?
I'd rather be
And that,
indoctrinated with the stuff I believe in.
exactly. You know, there's so much stupid, crazy crap out there. And I will say, like, my experience coming from Washington to Idaho has been pretty positive, and I haven't really noticed too much of that, like in the school system here, or at least where I'm at.
Yeah.
But you know, I stay pretty vigilant to that. I coming from Washington where it's a lot worse. And for those who are listening who live in Washington, like wherever you stand on whatever issues, you guys seriously need to start looking up what your kids' curriculum is, because it gets pretty wild pretty quick. So I remember I went to college for public health, and part of that was we had to look up the sexual education curriculum K through 12 for Washington State and learn about it. And they begin discussing gender theory as early as kindergarten.
Oh God.
Yeah, they do things like, oh, well, are you a boy or a girl? Well, I'm a boy. Well, what makes you a boy? Well, I like blue and play with trucks. Well, what happens if a girl likes blue and plays with trucks? And so instead of being like, oh, she's just a cool girl, then,
Yeah. Right.
it's like, oh, she must be a boy. Like, yeah, it's infuriating to see some of that stuff go on. And that's why I'm like, again, you guys, you gotta talk to your kids. You gotta figure out what they're learning, and if they're not talking to you, you gotta go see for yourself.
Yep, exactly. That's like, I don't know, I'm happy all of my siblings have gone to the same schools that I'm fixing to put him through.
Well, that's good. At least you have an idea of kind of what to expect.
Yep. And they were all pretty good schools when my siblings went there, so.
Well, that's good, man. Well, hey, before we end this thing, I want to throw out where people can find you.
Yeah, so Instagram, Marauder_custom_works. Then you can also hit my personal, which is Marauder_actual. That's where I post all my goon content, the night vision stuff, and shooting matches, and other anti-government memes and things like that. And then my website is maraudercustomworks.com. So
okay,
jump on there, order some stuff. If you want something custom you don't see on the website, you can shoot me an email directly from the website.
Oh, quick question about that too, just for listeners as well. Let's say I'm like, hey, I love your stuff. I want you to paint my gun, whatever we decide. Do I just go to an FFL and ship it to you? How does that work?
Not currently. I am waiting to get my FFL.
Okay. So are you currently just doing like non-serialized parts?
Yeah. So like I'll do SIG grip modules, magazines, base pads, uppers, hand guards, things like that.
Okay, cool. Sweet. But you're working towards that process to do.
Yeah, my first FFL got denied because of where we live, because I rent.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
it's so weird the rules come up with that.
Well, it was like just simply like the ATF just called my landlord, and the landlord was like, yeah, no.
It's just weird. I mean, yeah, like they'll do that, but then they'll just illegally backpack guns into Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who cares?
Yeah. It's so weird.
Again, don't look over here, aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite things going around is there's this like meme where they're like, yeah, where's the Epstein client list? They're like, aliens are real. They're like, yeah, no, but like that's cool and all, but like, what about the Epstein client list? They're like,
haven't you heard about the aliens?
We just said they're real. No, I get that. That's fine. They're like, why are you not concerned? They're like, did you go through the last 3 years? That's like the least surprising thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's just the wild thing to think about too. Is that like, in the last 3 years, shit has been so wild that literal aliens could come down and land in front of my house, and it would be the least concerning thing on my mind.
Right.
Yeah, one of my favorite things I saw was like was the one where it was like, do you think aliens are going to find it weird when they show up and they're like, hey, we're here to completely change your system of government and overthrow it. You're like, sweet, how can we help?
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm down. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Come on, take me.
Anything's better than this.
I will take you to my leader.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, it's been a good time talking to you. I appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, man.
For sure.
I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been good talking to you. For everyone listening, thank you again for coming back. We really appreciate the support. Check him out. I'm going to have his details for his Instagram and his website in the description below. So if you want to get some cool Cerakote stuff on, buy some magazines, support him in any way, check him out on his website and his Instagram. Show him some love. Other than that, everybody, have a good one. See you on the next one.
See ya.